I'm Riley, 34, female, and I was just disinvited from the very wedding I was paying for. The $80,000 wedding. My younger brother, Ethan, delivered the news himself in a text message that felt less like a conversation and more like a drive-by shooting of my feelings. After informing me that my presence was no longer required at his nuptials, he had the audacity to add, "If you want to be part of it, you can watch through the live stream link, lol." I stared at my phone, the screen's light feeling harsh in my quiet living room. The letters LOL blinked back at me, each one a tiny digital monument to a lifetime of disrespect. For a moment, my mind went completely blank. There was no surge of anger, no immediate flood of tears. There was only a profound and hollow silence, the kind you feel in the seconds after a loud, shocking noise. I read the message again and again. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. He hadn't even bothered to call. My brother Ethan is 28. He's the baby of the family, the artistic soul, the one who our parents, Mark and Susan, have always handled with delicate care. I, on the other hand, have always been the responsible one. I was the rock, the straight-A student, the one who never caused any trouble and figured things out on her own. For my entire life, I had been praised for my independence, while Ethan had been coddled for his dependence. I never realized that my family's praise was just a convenient excuse to focus all their energy, support, and resources on him. This dynamic wasn't new, it was the foundation upon which our family was built. I remember one specific week in middle school with perfect clarity. I was 13, and after months of work, I had won first place in the statewide science fair. My project, a functioning miniature maglev train, had been my entire world. I came home with a large blue ribbon and a small trophy, my heart pounding with pride. I found my parents in the kitchen, cooing over a piece of paper Ethan had brought home from his elementary school art class. It was a participation certificate, not an award, not a prize, just a printed confirmation that he had in fact participated. "Oh, Riley, that's nice," my mother said, glancing briefly at my trophy before turning back to Ethan. "But look at this." Ethan's teacher said his use of color was very expressive. My father ruffled Ethan's hair, beaming, "That's our little Picasso." My first place trophy from a state-level competition was placed on a side table in the living room where it gathered dust. Ethan's participation certificate was framed and hung in the center of the hallway. I learned a valuable lesson that day. My achievements were checkboxes, but Ethan's efforts were masterpieces. The pattern solidified as we grew older. College was the starkest example. I knew my parents' finances were tight, so I never dreamed of asking for help. I worked 2 part-time jobs while juggling a full computer science course load. I lived on instant noodles and cheap coffee, carefully managing my student loans and scholarships. I graduated with honors and a job offer already lined up. The year I graduated, Ethan, who had dropped out of his first university after a single semester, announced he needed to find himself by traveling through Europe. I watched in disbelief as my parents, who had always pleaded poverty whenever I needed new textbooks, happily drained a significant portion of their savings to fund his journey of artistic discovery. When I gently questioned the decision, my mother's response was swift and defensive. "Riley, you don't understand. Ethan is a sensitive soul, he needs this. You've always been so strong and capable, we never have to worry about you." And there it was again, my strength wasn't something to be celebrated, it was a justification for their neglect. I was the family's utility player, reliable and sturdy, while Ethan was the fragile, precious star who had to be protected at all costs. I bit my tongue and said nothing. I loved my brother, and a part of me, the part conditioned by years of this dynamic, believed it too. Maybe he did need the help more than I did. So when Ethan announced his engagement to Chloe, a lifestyle blogger with an obsession for all things perfect and picturesque, I knew what was expected of me. Ethan and Chloe sat me down for dinner one evening, their faces a mixture of excitement and carefully constructed earnestness. They painted a picture of a dream wedding, a historic manor with sprawling gardens, a photographer who shot for magazines, a catered dinner that was more of an experience than a meal. It was beautiful, and it was impossibly expensive. "We just don't know how we'll ever afford it, Rye," Ethan had said, looking at me with those wide, hopeful eyes that had always been his greatest weapon. "It's Chloe's dream, and it's mine too." And because I was Riley, the responsible one, the one who always fixed things, Do what I always did, I stepped in. My software company had taken off in recent years and I was financially secure. I wanted my brother to be happy, despite everything I loved him. Don't worry about it, I said, the words leaving my mouth before I had even fully processed them. I'll take care of it, consider it my wedding gift. The relief on their faces was immediate and overwhelming. There were hugs, tears, and promises that I was the best sister in the world. They happily accepted my offer of $80,000 to make their dream a reality. For a few weeks, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I felt seen. I felt appreciated. I foolishly believed that this grand gesture would finally shift the foundation of our family, that it would earn me a permanent, respected place at the table. Now, staring at the text message on my phone, I saw how wrong I had been. I hadn't bought my place at the table, I had just paid for the table itself, a table I wasn't even invited to sit at. The live stream link wasn't an olive branch, it was a confirmation of my status. I was the sponsor, the financier, the silent partner who was useful for her money but unwelcome in person. The LOL wasn't just a casual acronym, it was a laugh track playing at my expense. And in that hollow, silent moment, something inside me finally, irrevocably broke. The weeks following my generous offer were a blur of wedding planning, though planning isn't the right word for my involvement. I was more like a silent, walking ATM. Ethan and Chloe would call me, buzzing with excitement, to talk about their latest decision. It was never a request for my opinion, it was an announcement of a new expense. Riley, you won't believe it, Chloe's voice would chirp over the phone. We found the most divine floral artist. She does installations, not just arrangements. It's a bit over the initial flower budget, but her vision is just everything. I'll send you the invoice. I'd receive the invoice, a staggering sum for something that would wilt and die in a day, and I would pay it without comment. I paid for the non-refundable deposit on the magnificent Northwood Manor, a sprawling estate with gardens that looked like they were lifted from a historical drama. I paid for the celebrity-adjacent photographer, a man who charged an hourly rate that was more than my first car. I paid for the artisanal, farm-to-table caterer who insisted on sourcing ingredients from 3 different states. With every payment, the warmth I had initially felt grew colder. The thank yous became less frequent, replaced by an air of expectation. I was invited to exactly one planning meeting. It was with the venue coordinator at the manor. I drove 2 hours to get there, thinking this was my chance to finally be included. When I arrived, Chloe and Ethan were already deep in conversation with the coordinator, pointing at fabric swatches. Chloe looked up as I approached, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Oh, Riley, you made it. We're just finalizing the linens." She held up 2 nearly identical shades of beige. "Do you prefer eggshell or oat milk for the tablecloths?" Before I could even process the ridiculousness of the question, she had already turned back to the coordinator. "We'll go with oat milk. It has a warmer undertone that will pop on the gram." I stood there for the rest of the hour-long meeting in complete silence. They discussed canapés, signature cocktails named after their pet names for each other, and the optimal placement of the string quartet. Not once did they ask for my input. My only purpose there, I realized, was to physically hand my credit card to the coordinator to pay the next deposit. As I did, she gave me a sympathetic look. It was humiliating. Chloe's vision for the wedding was all-consuming, and anyone or anything that didn't fit her meticulously curated aesthetic was treated as an inconvenience. My boring lifestyle became a frequent target of her passive-aggressive remarks. She was a lifestyle blogger, a career that seemed to involve taking artful photos of expensive coffee and writing captions full of empty platitudes. In her world, image was substance. One afternoon, she and Ethan came over to my house to, as they put it, finalize the guest list. In reality, they just wanted to use my high-speed internet to upload a video. While Ethan worked on his laptop, Chloe wandered around my living room, her eyes scanning my decor with a look of faint pity. My home was clean, comfortable, and modern, filled with books and functional furniture rather than trendy, uncomfortable-looking art pieces. "Your place is so practical, Riley," she said, running a finger along the spine of a programming textbook on my shelf. "Don't you ever just want something that's beautiful for the sake of being beautiful?" "I find elegant code beautiful," I replied, my voice flatter than I intended. She gave a little tinkling laugh. Oh, you're so funny, that's WH. And I means you're all about logic and function. For the wedding, we're really going for a more romantic, whimsical vibe. You get that right. It was a statement, not a question. The subtext was clear, you don't fit the vibe. Ethan, my own brother, just sat there and nodded along. He was so mesmerized by Chloe, so desperate to keep her happy that he had become her echo. He used to be laid back and funny, but now he was tense and spoke in her preferred vocabulary of vibes, aesthetics, and curated moments. When I tried to talk to him alone to ask how he was really doing, he'd steer the conversation back to the wedding. He had lost himself in the grand illusion Chloe was building. The most painful part was watching my parents enable it all. They were utterly enchanted by Chloe. She was glamorous and poised, and she made their son the center of a world they found fascinating. They would listen enraptured as she talked about her social media engagement and brand partnerships. My success, built on years of hard work and intelligence in a complex field, was abstract and unglamorous to them. Chloe's success was visible, packaged in pretty photos with thousands of likes. One evening, my mother called me, her voice giddy. Chloe was just telling me about the wedding favors. They're getting tiny, custom monogrammed bottles of olive oil from a small grove in Italy. Isn't that the most charming thing you've ever heard? It sounds expensive, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. My mother's tone instantly cooled. Riley, please don't be so cynical. This is the happiest time of Ethan's life. We should all be supportive. After all, you're the one who made this possible. You should be proud, not critical. Proud? I was supposed to be proud of funding a spectacle that felt more like a brand launch than a family celebration. I was supposed to be happy that my brother was marrying a woman who looked at me like I was a piece of outdated furniture. Every conversation, every invoice, every dismissive comment chipped away at the foundation of love and duty that had prompted my offer. I was becoming a ghost at a party I was hosting. I was paying for an elaborate illusion of a perfect family, a family that in reality was more fractured and transactional than ever. The $80,000 wasn't a gift of love anymore. It was starting to feel like a ransom. The wedding was 2 weeks away. The final and largest payment was scheduled to be wired to the venue in a few days. It was a massive sum that covered the remaining balance for the manor, the catering, the staff, essentially everything. I had set up the international wire transfer to go through automatically on a Friday, giving them plenty of time before the big day. Life was busy, and I didn't want to forget. On the Tuesday before the transfer, a small, practical thought popped into my head. I still had no idea what the actual schedule for the wedding day was. Was I supposed to be there early for photos? Was there a specific dress code for the immediate family? These were normal questions for the sister of the groom to ask. Feeling a familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach, I pulled out my phone and opened my message thread with Ethan. The last several messages were from me, asking simple questions that had gone unanswered. I typed out a new one, keeping it light and casual. Me, hey, hope the final planning sprint is going well. Just realized I have no idea what the plan is for the wedding day itself. Let me know what time I should be at the manor for family stuff. Can't wait. I hit send and tried to put it out of my mind, diving back into a complex coding problem for work. Hours passed. My phone remained silent. By the evening, the unanswered text was a source of low-grade humming stress. Maybe he was just busy. It was the final stretch, after all, but a darker part of my mind knew this was different. He was avoiding me. Just as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Ethan. A wave of relief washed over me, quickly followed by dread. I picked up the phone and read his reply. Ethan, hey Rye, Sue about that. There's been a little change of plan. Chloe and I decided we want to keep the ceremony itself super intimate, just our closest friends and the wedding party. For the aesthetic, it's nothing personal. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my blood turning to ice. I read the words again, intimate, aesthetic, nothing personal. It was all Chloe's language. He wasn't even using his own words to dismember my heart. He was a puppet and she was pulling the strings. But then came the next message, the one that would alter the course of all our lives. Ethan, but we still want you to be a part of the day. We're setting up a professional live stream for everyone who couldn't make it. My best man will send you the link. If you want to be part of it, you can watch through the live stream link lol. Oh, there it was, the punchline, the final crushing blow delivered with a casual, thoughtless lol. I wasn't just disinvited, I was being relegated to the status of a remote spectator, a distant follower on a social media feed. I was good enough to sign the checks, but not good enough to see my own brother get married in person. The laughter in that acronym echoed in the silent room, mocking my generosity, my love, my entire role in his life. The shock was a physical sensation, a wave of cold that started in my chest and spread to my fingertips. My breath hitched. For a long, long moment, I just sat there, phone in hand, the world narrowing to that glowing screen. All the slights, all the moments of being overlooked, all the times I had swallowed my pride for the sake of peace, they all coalesced into this one devastating text message. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about my value as a person, as a sister, and in their eyes, my value was purely monetary. The lol told me they didn't even think I'd be upset. They thought I would just accept it. They thought I would sit quietly at home, open my laptop, and watch the festivities I paid for, smiling like a good, supportive sister should. They took my kindness for weakness. They took my silence for approval. And they had finally, fatally miscalculated. The hurt was immense, a deep, seismic crack in my soul. But through that crack, something else seeped in, a strange and profound calm. It was the calm of absolute certainty. The debate was over. The endless cycle of trying to earn their love and respect was finished. They had made the rules clear. I was not family, I was a bank, and a bank has the right to refuse a transaction. My movements were slow and deliberate, devoid of anger or rage. This wasn't a tantrum, it was an audit. I walked over to my desk and powered on my laptop. The screen flared to life, illuminating my face. I opened my web browser and navigated to my bank's homepage. I typed in my username and password, my fingers steady. I clicked through the two-factor authentication. There it was in the scheduled payments section, a pending international wire transfer. Recipient, Northwood Manor and Gardens LLC. Amount 65,000. This was the final balance. I had already paid the initial $15,000 in deposits for the venue, photographer, and other vendors. A scheduled date, Friday, July 19, 2025. I looked at the number, I thought about the manor, the oat milk tablecloths, the Italian olive oil, the photographer, the flowers. I thought about Chloe's perfect aesthetic. I thought about Ethan's casual dismissal of my presence. And then I thought about my years of hard work, the late nights, the sacrifices I had made to be in a position to even consider giving away such a sum. My mouse hovered over the button. It was a simple, small word, cancel. There was no hesitation. I didn't waver, I just clicked it. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment? I took one final look at the text message still glowing on my phone's screen. You can watch through the live stream link lol. I moved the mouse and clicked confirm. The screen refreshed. The pending payment vanished. It was done. I closed the laptop. The silence in my apartment returned, but this time it wasn't hollow, it was peaceful. I had not started a war, I had simply chosen not to fund their victory parade. I took a deep breath, the first truly deep breath I had taken in months, and felt the weight of their world slide off my shoulders. After canceling the payment, a strange sense of lightness settled over me. I had expected to feel rage or a desire for revenge, or at the very least, a gut-wrenching sadness. Instead, I felt free. It was as if I had been carrying a 100-pound backpack for my entire life, and in one quiet click, I had finally set it down. I walked over to my phone, which still lay on the bed like a tiny, toxic bomb. I looked at Ethan's message one last time, then I held down the power button and shut it off. The screen went black, and with it, the connection to their world was severed. The silence that followed was no longer threatening, it was a gift. It was my own. For the first time in months, my evening belonged to me. I didn't scroll through wedding blogs to understand Chloe's latest obsession or field calls about invoices. I put on some music, poured a glass of wine, and cooked myself a proper meal, not just something practical and quick, but something I truly wanted. I took a long, hot bath and read a novel, not a textbook or a business report. I was reclaiming myself moment by moment. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in years. There were no stressed dreams about floral arrangements or catering bills. I woke up on Wednesday morning feeling rested and clear-headed. The first thing I did was put on my running shoes and go for a long run through the park, watching the sun rise. The world felt vibrant and full of ability. I was the main character in my own life again, not a supporting character in Ethan's. I knew, of course, that the peace couldn't last. I was living in the calm before the storm. The wire transfer was supposed to be sent on Friday. The venue likely wouldn't notice the cancellation until then, or perhaps even the following Monday when they reconciled their accounts. I had a few days of quiet before the fallout began. I decided to use them wisely. I spent the rest of Wednesday and all of Thursday completely immersed in my own life. I dedicated my full focus to a challenging new feature for my app, finding joy in the familiar logic and creativity of my work. I met up with a friend for dinner, someone I had been neglecting amidst the wedding chaos, and we laughed for hours. I was rebuilding the walls around my own garden, the one that had been trampled in my rush to tend to everyone else's. On Friday morning, I woke up with a faint sense of anticipation. Today was the day. The day the payment was supposed to go through, the day it wouldn't. I made my coffee, sat down at my desk, and started my workday as usual. I refused to let their impending crisis dictate my mood. Their emergency was not my own. Around noon, I decided it was time. With a steady hand, I turned my phone back on. It was like opening a floodgate. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications that made the phone vibrate nonstop for nearly a full minute. A cascade of missed calls and text messages rolled down the screen. 27 missed calls, Ethan. 19 missed calls, Mom. 12 missed calls, Dad. 8 missed calls, Chloe. Then came the texts. I scrolled through the previews on my lock screen, a morbid curiosity guiding my thumb. Ethan, Riley, call me now. It's an emergency. Ethan, the venue just called. They said the payment didn't go through. It must be a bank error. Can you call them? Ethan, Riley, where are you? Chloe is freaking out. Ethan, pick up the phone. Then my mother's text started, laced with a familiar blend of feigned concern and underlying accusation. Mom, Riley, honey, Ethan is trying to reach you. The venue payment seems to have failed. I'm sure it's just a mistake. Please call him back. He's very worried. Mom, Riley, this isn't funny. You're causing a lot of stress. Whatever is going on, you need to fix this. Chloe's were unsurprisingly the most direct. Chloe, the payment for the manor was declined. You need to fix it immediately. This is my wedding we're talking about. Chloe, if you've done something to sabotage my wedding, I will never forgive you. I read them all with a strange sense of detachment. It was like reading the script of a play for which I already knew the ending. Their panic felt distant, their anger predictable. There was no mention of the text message Ethan had sent me, no apology, no acknowledgement of what they had done. They had leapt directly from disrespecting me to demanding from me. They didn't see the connection between their actions and my reaction. To them, my money was a separate entity from my feelings, an unconditional utility they were entitled to. I put the phone down on the desk, face down. The frantic buzzing continued, a desperate electronic plea for my attention and my money. But for the first time, I felt no compulsion to answer it. I was way too busy to care. I had a life to live, a business to run, and a sense of peace to protect. They had made their decision on Tuesday, telling me to watch from a distance. So I would. I would watch their self-made chaos unfold from the quiet, serene distance they themselves had created for me. The calls and texts were relentless all through Friday and into Saturday morning. They had formed a digital siege, a constant barrage of notifications designed to wear me down. I ignored them, letting every call go to voicemail. I knew, however, that I couldn't remain silent forever. A confrontation was inevitable, but it would happen on my terms when I was ready. That moment came on Saturday afternoon. I was sitting on my balcony, enjoying the sunshine, when my phone rang with my mother's number for the 10th time that hour. I decided it was time. I let out a slow breath, centered myself, and answered the call. Riley, finally, my goodness, we've been so worried. Are you okay? My mother's voice was a torrent of manufactured concern. I'm fine, Mom, I said calmly. I've just been busy. Busy? Riley, there's a crisis here. Ethan is an absolute wreck. The venue canceled on him. They said the final payment never arrived. Did you forget to send it? Was there a problem with your bank? Her questions were rapid fire, designed to frame the situation as a simple, fixable error, my error. There was no error, Mom, I said, my voice even and steady. I canceled the payment. Silence. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the faint static on the line. I could almost hear her processing my words, her mind refusing to compute them. Are you what? She finally stammered. What do you mean you canceled it? Why on earth would you do that? This is your brother's wedding. Is it? I asked, the question hanging in the air. Because my brother informed me that I wasn't invited. He suggested I watch it on a live stream. Oh, that, she said dismissively, a little too quickly. Riley, you're being far too sensitive. That was just Chloe's idea for the aesthetic. You know how she is, she has a very specific vision. It wasn't meant to be personal. Ethan was just caught in the middle. Caught in the middle, Mom, he's the one who sent the text. He's the one who added lol at the end as if my feelings were a joke. Don't be so dramatic, she snapped, her voice losing its gentle facade and revealing the familiar steel of impatience beneath. You're going to ruin your brother's happiness over a silly text message after you promised you would help. Hold on, Mom, Ethan wants to talk to you, she said suddenly. I heard fumbling on the other end of the line, and then my brother's voice, tight with panic and anger, burst through. Riley, what is going on? You have to fix this right now. Chloe has been crying for 2 days straight. The venue gave our date to another couple. Hello, Ethan, I said, my calmness a stark contrast to his hysteria. I got your text on Tuesday. The text? This is about the text? He spluttered, incredulous. Are you serious? I was just trying to let you know what the plan was. Chloe thought it would be better for the photos to just have the wedding party. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal to be disinvited from your own brother's wedding, the wedding you're paying for, I asked. I didn't disinvite you, I invited you to the live stream. He shouted as if this were a perfectly reasonable alternative. An invitation to watch a screen is not an invitation to a wedding, Ethan. It's an insult, I said clearly. And I've decided to accept the terms of our new relationship. You see me as a financial backer, not as family, so I'm behaving like one. The funding has been withdrawn due to a breach of contract. The contract in this case being basic human decency and respect. He was speechless. I had used logic, the language of my world, to define the situation. He was used to emotional appeals and guilt trips, not calm, rational consequences. Suddenly another voice cut in, shrill and furious. It was Chloe. How dare you? She shrieked, having obviously snatched the phone. You are the most selfish, petty person I have ever met. You're doing this just to hurt me because you're jealous. You're jealous of what Ethan and I have. Chloe, this has nothing to do with jealousy, I replied, my patience wearing thin. This has to do with how you and Ethan have treated me. You see me as an obstacle to your perfect aesthetic, but you have no problem with my money funding that aesthetic. You can't have it both ways. Our friends and family are flying in from all over, she cried, her voice cracking with theatrical despair. What am I supposed to tell them? That my wedding is ruined because my fiancé's bitter sister threw a tantrum. You can tell them the truth, I suggested. Tell them you disinvited the one person who was paying for everything and that, shockingly, the money was withdrawn. Tell them that actions have consequences. The line went quiet for a moment before my father's booming voice took over. Riley, that's enough, he said, his tone one of deep disappointment, the one he always used when I failed to fall in line. Your mother is upset, your brother is devastated, and you're talking about contracts and consequences. This is family. Is it, Dad? I asked, my voice finally trembling with the weight of years of frustration. Where was this family when I won the state science fair? Where was it when I was working 2 jobs to get through college? Where was it for the last 30 years? It seems family only becomes a sacred word when Ethan needs something. This time, the answer is no. I continued, the words pouring out of me now. My money was a gift freely offered out of love for my brother, but a gift is not an entitlement. Your definition of family is that I provide for Ethan and my role is to give and his is to take. I am done with that arrangement. The $80,000 is off the table. It is final. I could hear my mother start to cry in the background, my brother sputtering with rage. Chloe was yelling something incoherent, but I was done listening. I have to go, I said, my voice firm again. I have a busy day. And before any of them could respond, I ended the call. I blocked their numbers, Ethan, Chloe, my mom, and my dad. The digital siege was over. The confrontation was over. I had stood my ground, spoken my truth, and drawn a line in the sand that they would never be allowed to cross again. The week that was supposed to be a triumphant countdown to the wedding of the year became a cascade F humiliation for Ethan and Chloe. The silence from my end was absolute. I didn't answer calls from unknown numbers or respond to the pleading emails that started arriving from my parents. I had said my piece and my decision was non-negotiable. News of the implosion traveled, as it always does in families, through the grapevine. My cousin Sarah, who had always been more of a friend to me than a distant relative, called me a few days later. Her tone wasn't accusatory, but full of a kind of weary curiosity. So, she began, Aunt Susan is telling everyone you had a sudden financial crisis and had to pull the wedding funds. Is that the story we're going with? I let out a short, dry laugh. Of course it is, it's easier than telling the truth. I told Sarah the whole story, from the years of favoritism to the final, insulting text message. She listened without interruption. Wow, she said when I finished. Just wow, I'm not surprised, but I'm also completely shocked. Watch the live stream, lol. That's unbelievable. Good for you, Riley. Honestly, it's about time someone stopped letting them get away with it. From Sarah, I received piecemeal updates on the fallout. With the Northwood Manor gone, along with their celebrity photographer and artisanal caterer, Ethan and Chloe were in a full-blown panic. Their grand, picturesque dream had evaporated overnight. They scrambled to find a new venue on less than a week's notice, but everything was either booked or far outside the new, much smaller budget they were working with, which was essentially zero. My parents, in a desperate attempt to save face, offered their backyard for the ceremony. The wedding Chloe had spent a year meticulously designing to be the envy of her thousands of followers was now reduced to a potluck-style barbecue on my parents' patchy lawn. The custom monogrammed olive oil favors from Italy, canceled with a hefty cancellation fee. The string quartet, replaced by a playlist on Ethan's phone. The designer dress Chloe had bought, it now looked wildly out of place next to my dad's rusty grill. According to Sarah, who attended out of a sense of family obligation, the event was as miserable as it sounded. Chloe, the lifestyle blogger, looked less like a blushing bride and more like a dethroned queen. She barely smiled, and her eyes, usually bright for the camera, were red-rimmed and dull. She spent most of the reception texting furiously, likely trying to spin the disaster into some sort of contrived story about choosing authenticity over extravagance for her blog, a narrative nobody was buying. Ethan, Sarah said, looked like a ghost. He was pale and withdrawn, flinching every time Chloe shot him a venomous glare. The foundation of their relationship, built on the promise of a shared, glamorous future, had been shattered. Now they were left with just each other, and it was becoming clear that might not be enough. The financial strain and public embarrassment had exposed the cracks in their perfect love story. My parents, meanwhile, put all their energy into a campaign of guilt against me. My mother left long, rambling voicemails, her voice thick with tears, accusing me of being heartless and cruel, of destroying the family. My father sent a single, curt email. I am profoundly disappointed in your lack of grace and forgiveness. You have made your brother's life immeasurably harder. I hope you're happy. I read his words, and for a moment the old guilt pricked at me, but then I pushed it away. I hadn't made Ethan's life harder, I had simply stopped making it easier. I had forced him, for the first time, to bear the weight of his own choices. It was a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. I responded to my father's email with a single line, "I am happy. I hope one day you can be too." I knew my relationship with them was fractured, perhaps irreparably. But I was beginning to understand that the relationship I'd been trying to save was never real to begin with. It was a one-sided arrangement built on my sense of duty and their sense of entitlement. Standing firm against their pressure campaign was terrifying, but it was also empowering. I was finally setting boundaries, not just for them, but for myself. I was teaching myself that my peace was more important than their approval. The fallout was messy and painful, but on the other side of it, for the first time, I could see a future that was entirely my own. Months passed and the seasons began to change. The dramatic storm of the wedding fiasco slowly dissipated, leaving behind a quiet, altered landscape. The silence from my family was total. I had remained firm in my decision to block their numbers, and after a final, nasty email from Chloe detailing how I had ruined her life and her brand, the digital harassment stopped as well. The quiet that followed was no longer strange, it became my new normal. In the absence of their constant needs and expectations, my own life flourished. The mental and emotional energy I had once poured into managing their drama was now mine to invest in myself. I threw myself into my work with a renewed passion, leading my team to launch the most successful update to our application yet. I traveled not to find myself in some vague artistic way, but to see the world I had only ever read about in books, to stand in front of historical landmarks and feel a sense of my own small place in the vastness of the world. The most significant change, however, was internal. The deep-seated need for my family's approval, a thirst that had driven me for decades, was finally gone. It had been replaced by a quiet confidence and a profound sense of self-worth. I no longer saw my strength and independence as a burden that let others off the hook. I saw it as my greatest asset. One day, I was reviewing my finances and saw the $80,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account. It felt like blood money, tied to a past I was eager to leave behind. I knew I couldn't just let it sit there. It needed a new purpose, a better story. After some research, I found my answer. I contacted my old state university, the one I had attended while working two jobs, and worked with their foundation to establish a scholarship. The Riley Last Name Women in STEM Scholarship would provide a full-ride scholarship each year to a young woman from a low-income background, just like me, who was pursuing a degree in a technology-related field. The day I signed the final papers and transferred the funds, a wave of emotion washed over me that was more powerful than anything I had felt during the wedding drama. This was real, this was meaningful. This money, once intended for a single day of extravagant illusion, would now change the course of someone's life year after year. It would build futures, not just photograph them. It was the best investment I had ever made. I heard through my cousin Sarah that Ethan and Chloe's marriage was already on the rocks. The weight of their debt, incurred from trying to keep up appearances even after my funding was gone, and their mutual resentment had poisoned everything. Chloe's blog had lost its shine, her followers dwindling as her content became more bitter and less inspirational. Ethan was jumping between freelance gigs, more stressed and lost than ever. It was a sad story, and a small part of me felt a pang of sorrow for the brother he used to be. But I knew I couldn't save him. He had to find his own way. My life is quieter now, but it's also richer and more authentic. I've built a new foundation, not on the shifting sands of my family's approval, but on the bedrock of my own values, integrity, respect, and meaningful contribution. I am no longer just the responsible one. I am Riley. I am a creator, a traveler, a philanthropist, and a woman who finally knows her own worth. For anyone out there who has ever felt taken for granted, who has been made to feel that your value lies only in what you can provide for others, please know this: you are allowed to say no. You are allowed to draw a line. You are not a utility, you are a person. And your peace, your dignity, and your happiness are worth more than any party, any gift, or any relationship that demands you sacrifice them. You have the right to cancel the payment, walk away, and build a life where you are not just the sponsor, but the celebrated guest of honor.